Mzee Felix. You feel weird sana nikikuita Felix by the way.
Okay. Umezoea mohe.
Uzata ni watu wangapi wanakuitanga Felix?
Think wenye tunajuana nao professionally.
Professionally. Lakini huku mwingine ni mohe.
Mohe.
Naona mtu mwingine venye anaandikanga jina lako mohe. M-O-H-E. But anyway, uko fiti, are you ready for this?
Yeah, mimi niko fiti, hope uko fiti pia.
Yeah, pia mimi niko fiti. Kama vile tulikuwa tumemention, I think the coming episodes, around 4 or 5, we are actually focusing on amongst the biggest questions in life. Things to do with beginnings, things to do with God, spirituality, existence, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think these are the kinds of questions that we can never truly know the answer to them.
Yeah, true.
Ikuwe from a metaphysical perspective, from a philosophical, theological, even from a scientific perspective. Do you know even the Big Bang itself?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like scientists actually understand the beginning itself. Because it's like, so the first instance of time, I think this is where we start to measure the Big Bang, when t equals 0. It's just the basic equation that defines the very first instance of existence, t equals 0. Anything that preceded that is just meaningless. Scientists don't know how to explain that because our classical and quantum frameworks cannot explain what existed before t equals 0.
When you take a look at science, it's more of like they just observe what's there.
What do you mean observe?
It's like, let's say a phenomena like gravity. They tell you, when you jump up, you'll come down. And the reason why that happened is because there is something called gravity. As in, we're just like observing the effects of something. But most of the critical questions of human existence, we can't really pinpoint their beginnings.
Yeah.
We just like start explaining them from what we are observing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and I think part of the conversations we're going to have includes how is it that things are the way they are? Well, we do not really understand things as they are in of themselves, but I think we just try to deduce explanations to try to understand how reality actually is. But now the question is, why? Haujaikaa ukajipata tu unajiuliza sasa why are things the way they are? I don't know how best to put this, but it's a kind of a question that even the framing itself, I personally do not know how to conceive of it. Like, how did all this start? Why do we have the universe as it is? Why are we the way we are as the human species?
What's shaping us? What's controlling us?
I think if my mind serves me correctly, one of such kinds of conversations, kuna this philosopher alikuwa anaitwa David Hume. I think it was David Hume pamoja na C.S. Lewis. I don't remember the other guy. This is some sort of a treatise that was ever written. It was like conversations based on the 3 people. And one of the arguments that is normally made when we're talking about the beginnings are things to do with the best possible kind of a universe.
Yeah.
And now if we are bordering on the theological aspects of it, unapata the best possible kind of a universe was the one yenye from human experience had the capacity for both good and evil. And I think it's in recent times that we're able to understand that that is not just a moral question. This is actually something that is also embedded even to the material universe itself. I don't know what the implication of that will be, because if we are talking about everything, what the book of Genesis says, everything that God created was good. It means there's a moral implication that has been tied to the material universe itself. So ni ile najiuliza, why did it have to be like that? Why did we have to have atoms, say for example, all the laws from the quantum level, then bring it to the classical levels? Like why do you even have hair? I mean, why do you unaona vitu kama hizo? Like is there another kind of a reality that could have been made other than the one that maybe we perceive? Unapata swali kama hiyo in of itself, it's quite, sijui niseme ni meaningless ama ni kitu just it makes sense, because we just cannot conceive of a different kind of a reality. That is why I think even most arguments by atheists trying to refute the concept of a god, they normally think of a reality minus the one that we have. But then again, ukiangalia vizuri, the realities they're talking about, they are actually still tied to the realities that we, for example, God cannot exist because if you look at the world, there's too much suffering, there's too much pain, and in any reasonable framework of an understanding of who a god is, vitu kama hizo zifai coexist.
I have a stupid analogy. Which
I like the honesty.
Which quite really makes sense. Example, picture maths. Picture that 1 + 1 is equals to 2. 2 + 1 is equals to 3. And imagine ungekuwa mtoi alafu uanze kufunzwa mao from 4 + 4 is equals to 8. And you never knew that the beginnings of like 1 + 1 is equals to 2. Ingekuwa quite hard to grapple that enye 4 + 4 is equals to 16. So you can make sense. It's more of like reasoning from a point of like your deductive reasoning. You have a conclusion, then you're starting to reason from that conclusion, but you're not looking at the beginnings. So there is deductive reasoning and there is inductive reasoning. So for me, I quite see that if you are reasoning from a point of deductive, you have a conclusion, then you start reasoning from that point, from the point of the gravity equal. I'm saying its effects. Now let me study it. Unaweza end up into loopholes rather than inductive reasoning. Ile you are like 1 + 1 is equals to 2, and 2 + 1 will lead you to 3. So that's why when you're talking about beginnings, I'm more of like, if we miss the beginnings, we might miss everything. Yes. I don't know if that makes sense.
Kinda makes sense.
Yeah. It's more of like, adi unakumbuka tukifunzwa like hizi linear algebra ama calculus, ulikuwa unapatiwa like a formula like xy kayo
intercept na y intercept.
Yeah. Teme you're somebody who has never been taught anything to do with isographs and nini, and then you're given that and you're told like work yourself from that. Inaweza kuwa quite hard to like find out why y is equals to 0 if you didn't begin from the point of like xy nini and then ufanye hizo substitutions,
the foundations.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm like, the beginnings matter, the foundations matter, and ukianza from a point that enyewe haina beginning, unaweza end up in loopholes.
Yeah. And do you think, can we really ever understand completely the beginning? For example, from the context of the Big Bang, T = 0. I think from a scientific point of view, we understand this based on quantum and physical laws. And so my question is there more to it that science has not yet been able to discover, or science science just doesn't know how to describe some of these things? So for example, I think just by basic logic, science just explains what happened after the Big Bang, but ontological kinds of questions to do why it is the way it is.
Where did the Big Bang come from?
Where did it even come from?
I'm saying now, like the Big Bang is like the example which I gave, starting from like 4 plus 4 is equals to 16. Sisi unaweza
8 4 plus 4 8
8.
okay.
Right now you might think that it's easy maths, but imagine a kid starting to learn from that point, not from the basic level of 1 plus 1 is equals to 2.
Of even how 1 plus 1 actually equals to.
That's why I'm like, beginnings matter.
They truly matter. And so wacha tuingie kidogo. I think one of the biggest questions of life, especially when we're talking about beginnings, is about God. Just share your thoughts, your rawest, if there's such a word, your rawest thoughts. Ukisema that God exists, what exactly do you mean? Ama, why do you think he exists? Ama, who do you think God is?
For me, I look it in terms of like order, and if that order is missed, everything goes astray.
So it's like saying part of, you can't mention God. No, Ama, you can't mention order without mentioning God.
Yeah.
Like there's just no sense in mentioning order without mentioning God.
Yeah.
Okay. And for someone who asks you why God is a necessary being in order, or how will you explain it to them? Mtu mwenye anaona ni kama order can just exist without necessarily having to involve God. What can you tell them? What are your thoughts?
They tell me where that order which you think exists without God started from. Tell me its beginnings. I don't know if it makes sense.
I see your point.
So stop telling me that yes, you can
order can exist just in of itself. It must have had an agency.
Even there is this, you can imply God without really mentioning him. It's more of like, yes, you can talk about order. Yes, we can. And that's like studying the effects of something. But in order to get like the root causes of things, like the human deepest questions, and really find a framework of answering them, we need something that has a beginning. And the little order which we have, the frameworks which we have as human beings, are just like snippets of what that order really looks like in the greater atmosphere. Things like 4 plus 4 is equals to 8. That's a form of order, but that's just like a subset of it, of a whole bigger thing. Yeah. So yes, you can say that, you can mention that enye hapo God ameingililia hapi 4 plus, but where's the source of like 4 plus 4 is equals to 8?
How is it even possible?
How is it even possible? Yeah.
Unapata, hata if we decide to reduce everything to the most basic coded laws, for example in the quantum realm, utapata what we think as a beginning will always yield something else that precedented it. So unapata, from what we understand, especially from a scientific framework, ni kama everything that has a beginning had a beginning before that beginning. No. I think that is why science decides to have certain limits. Inajiambia yenyewe, actually, we cannot measure anything beyond t equals 0. I think that is the most basic of the beginnings that science is able to tell us. But clearly, they also do admit that just by basic logic and reasoning, there must have been something else that preceded t equals 0. Because that is not measurable. Those are the kinds of things now that we call now the biggest questions of life.
And I think the advancements which we are just seeing of science, it's more of studying of the effects that are already happening and were already happening.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this implication of always studying things and studying effects might never really end.
Yeah, might never.
Ukifikiria vizuri, yeah, might really never end.
And sometimes pia mi ufikiria, and the point of it all, let me say something that might sound controversial. But do you think sisi kustudy and discovering everything that we have, do you think, in the grand scheme of things, has it really helped us understand?
For me, I have a question.
Mm.
If advancement in science really solves our problems, why is it even the generation of right now enyewe tuko na mashida mingi na tunakapitia like we are really finding we have times that we are finding it hard to like grapple the essence of life.
Yeah.
Yet we have the most advanced
Technologies, the most advanced
medicals,
science.
tumepata cure to many diseases, but mbona as in it's like science inatreat to the how do you call it, the symptoms of something,
But the
not
root
really.
causes, we have never truly understood those.
Yeah.
But the science, I'd say it has a very linear perspective. Because you remember, I've been mentioning something about wicked problems in social policy planning. There are such things as wicked problems, the kind of problems that you do not know how to define them. And the moment you define them, inaonekana yenyewe ni kama there's even a much deeper problem. It can even yield a much deeper problem that more often than not is normally unprecedented. Don't even know how to solve them. So I think the claim that science has truly advanced civilization, I'd say it's from a very linear kind of a perspective. But I think questions to do with existentialism, the reason why we're here, those are things that I don't know why people shy away from those. Like, people are so grounded. I'd even dare to say that when they truly hold the scientific perspective in trying to explain everything, I'd say there's just something they're totally missing.
Figures who like amaze me, angalia like business people who have really made it. They talk of like ukiangalia the frameworks which they have developed in measuring businesses, like ukiangalia kitu like the 5 whys. It's based on the concept that ukiangalia problem for the first time ama the second time, you might really never find it. Unaweza end up not finding the root causes of why a problem is so. That's why they say that lazima ujiuliza like 5 whys. Why is this happening?
To the root cause itself.
This is leading to this is leading, as in the main idea is like if you just perceive problems on their surface level and then you find a solution to them, you might create other problems in that solution which you provide.
And I think one of the things that can actually also help us understand beginnings is talking about, there's this word, I don't know the implication of the word itself, the full meaning of it, but something we call the truth. Like, the truth is something that is just, it's both a fact, it's even deeper than a fact. It's just what actually exists. And in a concept like first principles thinking, you conceive of what has to be true, and then you build up using logic from there.
But
so for example, a statement like God exists, it's now the question of, is that true? And we use different kinds of concepts to try to explain it. And science is one of those concepts that can't explain God, because science is more interested with things that can be falsified. In the sense of the scientific system of thinking, that is, you come up with a proposition, you measure it, you test it, you verify it, and now you come up with conclusion, or deductive reasoning itself, right? But sasa, when it comes to God is an unfalsifiable concept. That is why science thinks it's meaningless.
For me, it's more of like science, it's starting from a point of deductive reason. And yes, you might get sometimes unaweza fall into like the truths of life through that, through like trying, and then you're like, nah, this is the truth, not this one. But if you had like the source of it, that's a game changer.
Yeah, that's a game changer. If we actually knew things as they are.
Yeah.
I think
even how as the human existence came to be, and just finding the patterns of human existence, as in you can really get to the root causes of, as in the truth whatever the truth is.
Nice. Now, let us now confine a little bit the conversation towards a theological perspective, yeah? So, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God. I was doing a study of that verse in Hebrew, the original language. And you know that the sense that the writer of this passage wanted us to understand, part of that sense includes things like principles and laws. Like if we are to conceive of any principles or laws or any realities, they all need to be grounded in God.
Yeah.
Like the sense itself is not like a scientific sense per se, like a T or T equals 0 according to Big Bang, but the foundations of why T equals 0. So in the beginning, God
is.
So it's like, something else personally. Let me just say it from a very personal perspective. Me feel ni kama trying to explain God either inakujanga na some errors ama inakujanga na some errors simply because ni kama tunakuanga tushaamua the reality of who God is.
Your own perception.
Yes, your own perception.
Actually, because, that brings us to the topic which we want to explore for today: will and free will and condition.
Yeah. So unapata
maybe we are just seeing God through our own conditions of life.
But perception. If the Bible itself says that God is eternal, and we can never fully conceive of who God is. Maybe what we perceive of God is actually true, but it's not all there is about God. The concepts of omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience, and all, these are things that we can't truly define. I think the human mind is quite limited to a point that I think it's part of what Genesis chapter 3 tries to explain about the condition of the human, because ni kama we tried to confine God.
Do you think those conditioning arises when our beginnings are false?
Well, there's that.
There is an error with our beginnings.
Yes, there's that. But I'm trying to conceive of the reality of Adam and Eve before the fall, because kulingana na the biblical record, it seems to me ni kama they were truly exposed to the beginning itself. Now the principle above all principles, the laws above all laws.
Yeah.
They truly, hawakuwa limited in any sense. They were not limited by time. They were not limited by the physical laws. They were not limited vile sisi tuko. Like unapata hata reality Adam and Eve, sometimes from even a theological standpoint, I don't think it's something we can truly. The reason why I'm saying that is because, for example, when you introduced to Genesis, I think it's 3, there's a statement mahali I read at in the cool of the day, or the way God interact when they ate the fruit. So when God appeared to them, I think there's a verse hapo inasemanga in the cool of the day. In Hebrew the word is like ruakio. I hope I'm having that pronunciation correctly. That is not a measurement of time. These are sort of moments, undefined moments. There are certain defined moments known as aeons. Aeons are even more than light years. These are things that, like very huge quantities of time. Let me put it that way if we are to understand it from a concept of time. Unapata the way Adam and Eve existed, they sort of, if there's any sense in living outside time, they lived outside time. Tukisema pia God is not bound by time. That's the sense, that's the reality Adam and Eve. And it's from that perspective.
Don't you think ukiangalia of late nimekuwa nikiangalia like maths and its symbols. In maths we know that 1 + 1 is equals to 2 no matter where you go and no matter what time frame you use. Maybe that is what is meant by not having the not being bound by time. It's more of like whatever I do now, my action right now, they're more of like truth. Do you? It's not
certain laws of truth
that are not bound by time. You can't say that in this context, in this perspective, this was the right thing to do, this was the right decision to take.
It just is.
It
applies across.
Everywhere across. And if it's not like that,
then the fall happens. So unaona your reality, but that's a very interesting kind of a perspective. There are laws that call them universal laws,
and that's why I'm like, it all started in the Garden of Eden, and that's where the fall of man began. And once he fell, it's like he he fell from that truth.
Yes.
He fell from that, like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like that was wiped from your life, and your life depended on 1 + 1 = 2.
Sasa ndio akakuwa trapped now by physical laws.
Now through suffering, you are like, bro, ni kama hii life it makes sense.
So do you even having to try to conceive of how the beginnings were.
What we are doing is like we are just searching for what we lost.
Ni kama we are searching, ama we are trying to discover who we truly are. Because
trapped in time.
Having that line of reasoning, I think that is where we also come to understand one of the realities that were created in the beginning about the spirit. Something else.
Maybe even the spirit works like that.
Yes, it actually does. It actually does work like that. But the way we define spirits, I'm not sure if we truly understand what spirits are. Because it's simply, I think the best definition of what a spirit is from wacha tu niseme from a material ama a physical sense is simply something that is not physical ama something that is not material. I don't know what the implication of that is. Hata tukisema God, the whole concept of a God is that he is a spirit. God is a spirit. Unaona? And
I think now in regards to how we interact with now the world that's beyond us, it's a matter of inductive reasoning, not deductive reasoning. Don't know if that makes sense. We need to have beginnings so that you can end up in the right path.
And I think beginnings, part of what beginnings involves the spirits.
Actually, I think science does that. It's more of like we want to understand these certain phenomena. We only start from like, what do we have now, and how does this lead to this, and this leads to this. We never start from a point of like this phenomena. Now we are like starting from the phenomena itself and backtracking backwards. It's more of like, if you do that, you'll end up in loopholes.
Why do you think inductive reasoning is a much better framework than deductive? Is it that it's better?
For me, it's always of like, this will lead you to this, and that is what I've seen work. Bring that order. You see,
but just to clarify, deductive reasoning. Okay, if we are now to infer truth elements, it's like saying how you arrive. So you have a true conclusion. So that means also how you arrived to that true conclusion has to also be true.
That's in
facts in deductive reasoning, but this is contingent on things that are true. So ukisema all mammals,
but the question is, how do you know that a certain fact is true? Because
your process, it's not that it's inductive reasoning, but
let me get this straight.
So you get
difference between inductive and deductive
reasoning. In deductive logic, deductive reasoning, It's from the word deduce. It's where you're deducing. How can I put this?
It's more of like you're starting from a non-truth.
Sasa swali ni, how do you get to known truths? How did you even get there? How are you even able to determine that that's a...
Actually, that's the limitation that I'm bringing. I'm more of like, if we apply the deductive reasoning in problem solving in order to lead in such loopholes. What's the meaning?
Sasa, again, unajua deductive reasoning has to do with truth values, but inductive reasoning need the best possible explanation. Inductive is more of probabilities. From the previous episodes, tumekuwa tukiongea about the difference between...
Uangalia meaning and then we...
Okay. Inductive is a form of logical thinking where you move from specific observations to a general conclusion. Unlike deductive reasoning, the conclusion is inductive. The conclusion in inductive reasoning is probable, not guaranteed. Let me explain it just layman's language. Unatafuta the best possible explanation for something. That is inductive reasoning. The best, unasikia hizi ni the best possible explanations for something. Unaona? So for example, tukisema kitu kama let me just look for an example. The sun has risen every day in the past. So we expect that even in future, based on new information already in tumeona in the past that the sun has always risen, we expect that will always be the case in the future. That's just the best possible explanation. Because it has risen in the past, it will rise in the future. That's inductive. But deductive, it's where you start with general principles. And then you derive a specific and a logical certain conclusion. So I believe this is where deductive reasoning has to do more with the truth. The facts. What are the facts? So if the premises, if those fundamentals are true and the reasoning is valid, then the conclusion must be true. So deductive reasoning in a follow just a simple pattern. There's a major premise. So let me just use a classic example. All humans are mortal. We know that. Based on what we understand from philosophy, from science, from biology, we know that all humans die. All right? And Felix is a human. So of course, you're not a fish. So conclusively, we will say that now then Felix is mortal. If all humans are mortal and Felix is a human, so then it means Felix is mortal. So unapata hiyo conclusion that Felix is mortal is contingent. The truth about that conclusion is contingent on the principles the premises that you've built, which is number one, Felix is a human and all humans are mortals. That is deductive reasoning, deductive logic. But inductive ni ile unatafuta the best possible explanation. So tukisema for example to try kuangalia kwa nini maybe a disease like ni cholera, really, like cholera kwa nini imekuwa prevalent. Unapata the experiments that we will carry out itatupatia certain general conclusion, na hiyo context inaweza change maybe given another country for example. So kama tunaona cholera iko spread mainly through water, we are not saying that cholera is spread through water. Like hakuna that certainty to it. Unaona, it's just the best possible explanation given certain context. Unaona, that is why I'd say, if I'm understanding this correctly, deductive logic deductive reasoning has to do with facts. But inductive reasoning has more to do with best possible explanations.
But there is a danger in deductive reasoning if the premises, yes, we might think that they are truths.
Yeah.
But in the case that they are false and we thought they were true,
Yes.
we might all kila msee mwenye anafuata hiyo
nini. Yes. I agree by the I agree, because unapata in deductive reasoning unapata you might have a true conclusion, but the premises are false. That is, the reasoning is invalid. Unaona, when it comes to premises,
so in regards to our argument, if the premises we have are wrong, we'll always end up to the wrong conclusion. Not the wrong conclusion, but
a flawed conclusion.
Yeah, flawed
unapata the conclusion might actually be true,
but the logic is right.
The logic is right. So for example, actually let us use an example. All mammals give birth. Dark-billed platypus is a mammal. So the conclusion will just generally follow that dark-billed platypus give birth. But we know that dark-billed platypus does not give birth. It lays eggs.
Yeah.
So unapata the premises are actually true. But the conclusion is true. Premises na conclusions iko true.
But the whole idea is flawed.
But the reasoning itself, now based on facts, is not true. The reasoning ndiyo haiko true. So you have true. So it's like saying you might have true premises and be a true conclusion, but the reasoning itself is very, very invalid.
So we can
based on what we know.
Facts can actually lead you to the wrong nini. What do you call them? Flawed, not wrong, but flawed.
Not facts themselves, but how you reason them out.
Oh.
So unaona, yes, mammals give birth. That is a fact.
So you can't say that we know this to be a fact, so this is it.
This is it, exactly. Unaona. So the way you reason it out is what is going to make the conclusion of that premise either true or false. Unaona. So kuna other kinds of you might have a true premise, maybe one true premise, another one is false, but you still get a true conclusion. Unaona. Sasa deductive reasoning sasa in a sort of diagnose hizo kuangalia if that reasoning is valid, if the reasoning itself is valid. Unaona. So
the idea is, if we never question the premises which we build our lives on, though it's logically sound and correct, we might end up in places we never expected to be.
Yes. Yeah. So the thing is understanding kwanza the truth about facts.
Truth is all about origin.
Hata hiyo example yenye tumepeana, all mammals give birth, toa hiyo jina all, sema tu mammals give birth, because not all mammals give birth anyway, and because they are egg-laying mammals. So ukisema mammals give birth and dark-billed platypus is a mammal, you can't just conclude that dark-billed platypus gives birth. You can't just conclude that. So unapata the whole point ni kama kusema, for you to truly establish a true conclusion, the premises ought to be true. And those premises, be it ikweni facts ama sijui whatever, they just have to be true. They just have to be true.
And in any case that you miss something.
Yeah. So unapata now the mistake. So unapata the mistakes that normally arise in reasoning, ndizo sasa vitu zinaitwa fallacies. A fallacy is simply a mistake in reasoning. I'll give an example. There is a category, let me call them a category of fallacies that are called fallacies of zinaitwaje. Well, let me just look something up here. Categories of fallacies. Yeah, fallacies of relevance. So under fallacies of relevance, you have different kinds of fallacies. For example, kuna moja inaitwa ad hominem. An ad hominem is an attack on the person. So, for example, I think if there is one place we observe such kinds of fallacies, in politics, in the media. So unapata the basis for someone reasoning is based on who that person is, not the reasoning you will say, but who they are as a person.
And that who they are is based on the premises that they ought to believe.
No, not really. It's so, for example, will make a very true conclusion, but because maybe you support a certain political party, let me use a very classic example. Because someone is gay, apeana a true conclusion, so mimi niamue kuamua ni gay, so huwezi msikiza. That's an attack on the person. Attack on the person also has two subcategories, and I think kuna moja it's circumstantial, na ingine it's sikumbuki vizuri. Moja ni circumstantial, lingine ni abusive. Abusive ni ile unatusi mtu, na circumstantial ni ile you reasoning based on the circumstance of someone. Ile for example ati unasema someone who is poor haizi kuambia kitu. You don't want to listen to a poor person. Ama even in the structures of business itself, ati you don't want to listen. You don't want to listen to your juniors ati because they are juniors they know nothing. Ati wao tu wanafaa kustick na chenye mwambie. Sasa that is so ati akikupatia nini fulani unaamua that it's not valid simply because they are junior to you. That's a mistake in reasoning. Unaona, another fallacy of relevance, kuna moja ile appeal to authority. But kama kuna kitu inakuwa so common, let me just go through the fallacies of relevance. Kama kuna kitu inakuwa very very common, unasikia msee anaamua kupeana the reason for something based on what someone who was in authority said. So utachukua quote for example kia msee mwenye an authority, for example in science or in philosophy, and you decide that is the truth because that person said it.
And that's a premise you've just built.
No, that's now a fallacy. It's a fallacy. It's an appeal to inappropriate authority. Unaona, you deciding to use the conclusion of a certain fact because mse fulani alisema hivi na hivi, lakini wewe mwenyewe you can't argue it out.
Mbona alisema
like your only point of argument ni because huyo mse alisema hivyo.
He's a great authority in such an area.
Exactly. So utapata maybe a politician atakuja aseme
and don't you think that's the danger that we've built the world as we know it right now based on that?
Yeah.
It's more of like, this is what I was taught, so
yes,
this has to be true.
Ati sasa because babangu aliniambia A, B, C and D, this is what that is now a fallacy. That's a mistake in reasoning. You don't know how to reason it. You're simply placing you reasoning on a very inappropriate
and authority. The way what was squeezing the quotes.
Exactly. Utasoma quote uamue this is true. Na ukiuliza kwa nini it's true, utasikia because Socrates said it. Like they do not know how to reason. Actually, someone told me now that is appeal to inappropriate authority. But if you think about it, ukipata when you're arguing with someone, now all they can say, all they want to bring up is what facts someone has said. Ukiangalia vizuri, they do not know how to reason it out. They do not know how to reason it out. Unaona, another similar kind of a fallacy, kuna fulani inaitwa an appeal to emotion. Now politics again, politics is marred with this kind of a fallacy. Unapata pale parliament, atuoli na tusitisho sisi. Like unapata msee akona a certain kind of an emotion, enyewe you will just have to do what they say. Unaona, so and the kinds of emotions, so kuna moja inaitwa
I also saw in quotes walikuwa wana debate na msee alikuwa anasema the only time you are allowed to become arrogant is whether you are intelligent, good looking, a beautiful good looking woman, and the last one
huyo ni babu wino.
No, I was like, why should you be arrogant because you're intelligent?
Ukisikiza most of the reasoning
and actually if you look at the law arena, it's built on that. It's more of like, this case was handled like this in the past, so we ought to handle our next cases in such a context.
But kuna a very important nuance there. Unapata, yes, inaweza kuwa iko handle live the past and you can use that as a reference for handling a certain case. But the nuance is, it's used as the only basis for
It's more of a
a
reference.
judgment. Of course, every case inakuwaga very, very unique in its own sense. Unaona? Your references to past cases, they simply help in reinforcing the arguments that are being made, but it's not the only basis for argumentation. No. So I feel like mentioning another fallacy of relevance, kuna fulani still in the appeal to emotion, where you also appeal to pity. Unapata pale, let me use the context ya koti. Unapata msee ati mna accuse mtu, mnaona hata vile anakaa, vile ni mchafu, vile maybe hata vile hana pesa huyu jamaa, sasa kwa nini mumcrucify hii design? You're appealing to an emotion known as pity. I'm not saying it's wrong. Something you need to understand about reasoning, about fallacies, in it hakuna a question of whether it's right or wrong. It's simply a mistake in reasoning. You can't say ati ameua and you shouldn't prosecute because ati you say ni a victim and stuff like that. Well, ni vibaya. But anyone will be moved by pity crucify him, say who is already down. Unaona? But you can't use that as a basis for judgment ama argumentation. Unaona? Hiyo ni inaitangwa, I think, something ad misericordiam, an appeal to the pitiful heart. Unaona? Kuna another emotion kama anger pia. Politics, these things exist, man.
Yeah.
Ukisikia,
And actually,
sorry to say, especially in the Kenyan history, more often than not, ukifuata vizuri vile the opposition wao try to present the arguments for the reason why they do not want the government, wanataka kuwatoa, zinakuwa based on these kinds of fallacies. Appeal to emotions, an attack on people. So nasikianga matusi zenye ziwe nini? Wewe Sobrano. Wewe Goliath. Hizo ni fallacies. Lakini ukiangalia, they are not giving you solutions.
so
I'm not saying the government of the day is justified. I'm not saying that. But I think tukifika where politics are so mature enough that we actually use reasoning, even as a people. Sisi we are swayed kulingana na, especially money. It is said that people are paid a lot of money to vote. We have been divided even along the lines of tribes. Like, we are staking our future on such things. So the moment when sisi wenyewe pia to understand that there's more to money, there's more to these figures who tell us all these kind of things, there's more to that, tukaelewa, tukajua how to look at solutions.
but for me, it's more of like, if you're conditioned in a certain way, you might not reason the way you're reasoning right now.
Yeah, ndio kweli. Sadly, that's
That's
majority
how
of people.
That's how we are.
Yeah, that is just how we are. Unaona? So tulikuwa tunaongelea, so now let us bring it back to story, the whole thing about logic and reasoning when we come to the beginnings. So sometimes using the current frameworks that we have, before the podcast, I was trying to tell you about Ludwig Wittgenstein's work, Tractatus Logico Philosophicus. Umse anatry kutuonyesha pia in logic, the language itself that we normally use is also the basis for the kinds of frameworks that we create to understand reality. So science itself is a language, philosophy is a language, theology is a language, but kuna vitu zenye we can sort of tell, I don't know by what means, we can sort of tell that we just do not have a conception of how to describe them anymore, because now our language breaks. So for example, ukisema what existed before t equals 0 in the Big Bang, unajua ukisema what existed, existence itself, using the frameworks that we have, has a scientific implication in it. ukisema existence, it means it must have had a beginning, and the beginning, as we know it according to the frameworks of science, near t equals 0. That is how we're able to measure those things. But before that, if you're to use the scientific perspective, you can't talk of existence. I think that kind of a thinking yenye Ludwig represents, unapata, it kind of makes sense when the Bible also mentions about kusema ukweli, we cannot contain God enough. Like, there's so much about God yenye we cannot describe fully. Because the moment we think we've known about God, even the whole corpus of biblical stories and history inakuonyesha clearly there's something more to the experience of what, for example, the Israelites had that we just do not have an understanding of.
And I think all that we got, it's the principles of like the commandments. Even if you look at I don't know if I'm right, the meaning of the word commandment, supposed to like lead to something. It's more of like, if you follow this principle, it will lead you to something.
It will give you a certain outcome.
Yeah, and if you don't, you'll never see. Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's what
That's
like,
what a command is.
Yeah. It's not like you should do this and it's like you're slaves. No.
Inakwambia this is what the reality is. So do this. This is what you're likely to get. So do X, you're likely to get Y.
Yeah, and
if you don't do X, you won't get Y.
From our fallen state, you won't understand why what reality is, and not until we obey those commands that were given even before us. And if you do, it's more of like, when you obey, it leads you to more understanding.
Yeah. Obedience. I think that is exactly what, even through Genesis 1 and 2, it's trying to insist. And obedience, I think more often than not, ni kama tu fikiria about obedience from the perspective of being a slave. But it's not really from the perspective of being a slave. It has to do with knowing reality, what it is, and so aligning yourself with reality to get certain kinds of outcomes.
Yeah. It's more of like, you can never... You're a type of being that can't really grapple what reality really is. But if you follow some certain forms of principle, it can lead you to it.
And so breaking such principles is now...
it's what's enslaving you to never see reality for what it is.
And that is where the question of
the
free will comes in.
That's what was lost in the Garden of Eden.
Next episode.